Hello, everyone. Welcome to another exciting episode of the Wealthologist Live. I'm Chris Hobart, the Wealthologist, and as always, I'm thrilled to be here with you today, and really excited because, hey, we got my sidekick.
Yeah. Hello. How's everybody doing?
You can introduce yourself.
I'm Jacob Woodrum, investment strategist.
And we are excited to be here. End of year, so it's going to be exciting. And whether you're joining us here locally from the Carolinas, or you're one of the many folks that are watching us somewhere else, we just want to thank you for making time to make the focus near this time of the year, the end of the year, about your financial future. It's been a fun year. We've been doing this now over a year, and I think we've had a lot of good responses. Just had lunch with a client today, and he said he watches it and listens, and he loves it. So hopefully you're in that same boat.
Makes us feel good, at least.
Yeah, exactly. He was just telling us that. Today we got some great things lined up, obviously, end of year. Jacob, you're a lead investment strategist, so you get to really share your insights into the big economic trends, everything that's going on shaping our world. And you're also going to talk with us about two managed portfolios. Yep. So this is that concept of that 3-2-1. Right. But we're also, as we're doing now, we're also going to kick you off the stage for a little bit, and we're going to introduce Andrew Greer, our senior wealth advisor, who's going to join us a little bit later to take care of the one, which is more the financial planning topic of the 3-2-1. And that's going to be a tip that you can put into action immediately. Andrew's also going to help me wrap a couple things up with our real popular quickfire Q&A segment. So stick around for that. So here's what we're going to be covering today. We're going to start with the 3-2-1, and that's where Jacob and Andrew are going to share their expertise. Then we're going to dive into Hey Hobart segment, where I'm going to answer a viewer's financial question. And then finally, we're going to end with that Q&A, which is just that fast-paced segment that's packed with quick, practical advice.
Sounds great.
Are you ready?
Let's go.
All right, end of year. Do you ever get like the end of year just like kind of, I feel like the office is kind of giddy. I don't know if it's all the chocolate and candy that's
Well, there's a lot of that.
There is. And I'm going to brag real quick, everyone. I'm going to brag that I have not had one piece of chocolate or cookie or anything. And we've got a lot this year. I've actually lost a couple of pounds this month.
Hey, that's awesome.
Which it's tough.
Yeah,
I'll tell you.
Well, and to Chris's point, we have had a lot of sweets on the table to this.
Now, if you're sitting out there saying, should we send sweets or not? It's still send it. We appreciate it. We're not saying don't send it, but hey. All right, it is time to start the 3-2-1. And again, this is where we're going to cover 3 impactful economic events, 2 of our managed portfolios, and 1 financial tip to give you some actionable strategies. So, Jacob, you've been following the big trends in the market, in the economy. Let's start first with those 3 economic events.
Yeah.
What's on your radar right now?
Yeah, so we've got some interesting things that I want to talk about today. And it's funny, we've got the Fed meeting right now at 2:00.
Oh yeah. Right.
So, and I'm not going to talk a lot about that today.
And you're watching us instead of.
Thank you for
Jerome
tuning
Powell.
into us instead of Jay Powell. No, I want to talk a little bit first about just growth, kind of being on a fast track, and what we've really seen kind of powering our economy for the last couple years. And what we've really seen is this remarkable growth, specifically in manufacturing and more industrial production levels that is kind of interesting. We haven't seen since the 1970s. And the other thing that's been interesting is disposable income's gone up by about 31%, and that's since 2020. Now, when I say disposable income, just think, you've got income coming in, and after all expenses are paid and taxes are paid, what do you have left in your pocket? Mm-hmm. And, that directly relates to consumer spending, because consumer spending is also up about 35%. So, that's good for the economy. It has been good for growth. While prices are higher, we've seen that people are still spending, and that's been a big reason why we've seen some of the growth in GDP and production and things that we've witnessed over the last couple of years.
I got to tell you, Christmas shopping right now, you go to the mall, and just in my mind, I'm thinking at some point this engine's got to stop. People are going to slow down. Yeah. Holy smokes, people are spending, and I really do think you're just seeing this revived kind of energy around spending. I was at the mall the other day, and I just thought, my goodness. And then I thought, why am I at the mall? And I got on my phone and ordered my gifts, and I was done because I didn't want to stand in a line.
Well, and it is interesting because we do have prices higher. They're higher about 21% since COVID, but we still have that strong consumer spending, which has been good.
See, Jacob, you don't have kids yet. When you have kids, you can't use that as an excuse. Like I tell my daughters, I'm like, hey, inflation's up. We're going to cut back on Christmas. They're like, no.
Well, that's the problem. Caden doesn't get it.
Exactly.
He's so little. He'd be like, what?
Start cutting back now. Trust me, you'll appreciate it. All right, go on to that second topic.
Yeah. So second topic, I really kind of have themed this politics and money, and what do the kind of changes that we see maybe coming down the pike mean for us? We've got the Republican Party now controlling both Senate and the House. And what's interesting is history would tell us in that type of environment, the stock market actually might benefit. So if you look back, I think this has happened the last only 5 times over our history where we've seen a Republican sweep. We've seen the stock market, the S&P, averaging 16% during similar times. So, we're probably going to see some policy tweaks. I think we'll probably see, again, new taxes on imported goods. That's the tariff word that we're all hearing about. But also, I don't think that these are likely to disrupt the economy or interest rates. We could see some minor adjustments, but not anything extremely dramatic.
Just as an aside, I'd mentioned having lunch with a client today, and it was interesting because he's in the world of sourcing materials from China. And I asked him about the tariffs, and the old tariffs impacted them, and he also had comments on the new tariffs, right. and he just said, the reality is we're realizing the risk that China is for our business because they're really tied to China. It's really China or one other country. And he said, no matter what, we've got to look at moving, which that's very interesting.
Right.
I think the concern was tariffs are going to cost people a lot more. What it looks like is a lot of companies are looking to make a shift, which ultimately means that China is going to have a lot of, not necessarily a financial burden, but just that sucking of assets.
Well, and that's the thing about, I think, when we think, sometimes it's easy to think, oh my gosh, things are going to be rough or be difficult, but, capitalism works and it adjusts and it moves and it makes changes based on the environment. The last point that I wanted to talk about in my 3 section is really stock market. And again, when I think about the stock market and really think about the bull run that we've seen so far with some pretty big numbers, I wanted to sort of pull on that thread a little bit more because, since late 2022, the market's gained almost 70%. It's approximately 69%. And what's been so interesting is that when you look at the data and the statistics, the bull markets like this tend to last on average like 5.5 years. And so, if you look at where we're at now, we're at about 2.2 years in. And, all that said, we've got stock prices that are high right now because we have seen good growth. And again, I'm going to talk more about this when we talk about the 2 portfolio strategies. But, major companies in the S&P 500, the big boys, so to speak, they're expensive. And so it is really important. We touch on this all the time, but the diversification, it is really key. So you want to look at smaller companies, different industries. AI stands out as an industry for more kind of balanced growth potential.
And you mentioned smaller companies, and I know this is actually an article that you have coming out in our newsletter. That's coming out early next month, but that 2025 could be the year of smaller, what we call small cap companies. That this past year, large companies did very well, but oftentimes, the smaller companies are going to have a different time frame and different trajectory. So, hey, we'll see what that looks like. But hey, who doesn't like the sound of a bull market? Hey, times can always change, right? Stuff gets out of our control. All right, I forgot to do this before, so let me go ahead and there we go.
All right.
Look at that. So now we're going to move on to part 2 of our 3, 2, 1. You can tell the slides are relatively new, I forgot about it.
It's all right. It's all right.
But we're going to go ahead and move on to that second part of our 3, 2, 1, which is about the managed portfolios. Again, this is the thing that you and I, every week, we get to sit down and talk a little bit about what's going on, and probably where you and I get the most energized.
Right.
So talk with us. What are 2 portfolios that clients need to understand why it's in their portfolio, or why it might be something they want to have in their portfolio?
Yeah, no, and this is the part that is exciting to talk about. The first one that I wanted to mention is a portfolio we manage we call Income Growth Plus, and Chris and I talk about it all the time. But it's a balanced portfolio that's really a mix between stocks and bonds. But the key with it is it's focused on generating income, and that's really our main goal with this type of a portfolio. And so, just a couple of statistics that I think are important. Right now, we're generating a dividend yield on the portfolio of almost 4%. And it's interesting when you compare that to where the 10-year Treasury yield is. The 10-year Treasury is a little over 4%, but it's not much more than that. And so, we're looking to invest for income. But the thing that I really like about this strategy and this portfolio, especially right now, is we're not only just invested in fixed income or in bonds. It's about a 60-40 split. But we've got 60% allocated towards stocks that have growth potential more than what we would have in just a pure bond strategy. So it's a strategy that I think has a place from an income standpoint for someone, especially if we're looking for not only income but kind of a balanced approach.
I think what's interesting about this, because you and I were talking about this last week, this portfolio has almost felt a little bit like the redheaded stepchild, right? Where it almost got ignored. But when I look at this, you've got a nice yield on it, and you've also got good growth. And when we talk about yield and growth, it's kind of like buying a rental property, right? The value of the property goes up. That's your growth. That's your capital appreciation. And the yield is you have a good renter that is continuously paying you rent. In the world of rental property, that's what you want. You want a valuation of property go up, as well as income while you're holding that property. And that's what we're talking about with this portfolio. And it's actually done really well this year. It's not just about the 4% yield, but because of that stock piece, it's really driven quite handsomely.
Yeah. Well, and I think your analogy is really good because it's not only, it's, if you think about Chris's point with the rental property, we're invested in a way that we will see growth over time. So we'll see the value of that house grow, not just being so focused on the income or the rent, aspect of it. So the next strategy that I want to highlight in the time that I have remaining with everyone today is our portfolio that we call our prime growth strategy. And this is really, this is kind of one of our tried and true portfolios that is all stock. So there's no bond exposure, but we're really specific and kind of, I would say, intentional from a diversification standpoint. And we've become more intentional over the last year or so. And to kind of pull on that thread a little bit more, when I say be more specific from a diversification standpoint, we're really talking about not trying to be so exposed to some of the high flyers that we've seen in the stock market over the last year or two.
Which, who are those guys?
Though, you think of the Magnificent Seven is what they call them, the Apples, the Microsofts, NVIDIA of the worlds. Those are the companies that, they're very large. They've really driven the market, so to speak. But we've made some intentional moves to broaden our allocation to try to include some of those, mid-sized, small-cap companies that we do think, as we move forward, offer on a relative basis, better opportunities. And so they're much more undervalued compared to kind of those high-priced tech giants, and really do, in our opinions, offer higher return potential. And that was really the second one that I wanted to highlight today.
Well, and when I think about that, that portfolio is fun and exciting because you get to see names of companies that we're not running away from the Magnificent Seven, but we're complementing that to make sure we're not getting overexposure to that. And at the end of the day, that's what you want from us. As fun as it would be for us to chase the fanciest stuff, that can also be irresponsible because the one thing you don't want is for us to be helping you professionally, chasing the big returns, and then something bad happens and you're left out there. Obviously you still have exposure in this. I mean, this is still a portfolio that is meant to run, but we are trying to diversify out some of that direct risk of just, being exposed solely to those 7 companies, right? Yep. So, all right, well, Jacob, I appreciate that. Now we are going to move on to the next segment of the Wealthologist Live. Joining us for this segment is Andrew Greer. So, Andrew, welcome to this segment.
Thanks for having me back.
Good to have you back. Now, quick story. You're not going to see this at home, but you got to understand this. There is a slight height difference between myself and Mr. Greer. And by slight, I'm not short. I'm average height. Andrew is really tall. So right now, that's a little weird to admit this. Andrew's actually kind of squatting a little bit, and I'm actually standing on stacks of paper. And we had to do that because the camera we're on, it can't accommodate all the greatness between the two of us.
At the very least, I'm getting a good leg workout in today.
And you need to get your hair cut so it tops it off. You need a crew cut. That's going to be the next big thing for you. All right. Well, welcome, Andrew. Sorry to embarrass you, but as many of you know, Andrew's one of our senior wealth advisors, CFP. Andrew has been with us for over 12 years. Really makes a difference in so many clients' lives, specifically when it comes to giving that solid financial advice that complements what we're doing within the portfolio. So, Andrew, you ready to talk about this?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, you get to talk about the one, which is what's the one thing that is most impactful right now for so many folks.
Perfect. Well, thanks for having me back on, and to everyone tuning in today, thanks for dedicating your time to listen to us. So I'll just take a couple of minutes to cover one financial planning topic, and it's one that's come up a good bit here recently in a lot of client conversations and a lot of guest conversations, and it's a topic or strategy that oftentimes is overlooked or underutilized. And what I'm referring to are health savings accounts, HSAs for short. And a lot of you who are listening today, I'm sure you're aware of HSAs. You might even be actively participating in your own HSA. But again, what we're talking about here is truly the most powerful type of money that's out there, even more powerful than Roth money, because what we refer to HSAs is having triple tax advantage. Okay. And what we're referring to is, number one, when we're talking about tax advantaged, is on the contributions going into HSAs. Number one, you get a deduction for your contributions. So dollar for dollar reduction of your gross income. So that's number one. Number two, as when the money is in the HSA, you have the ability to invest those dollars, stocks, bonds, mutual funds, ETFs, quite frankly, just about anything you want to. And as that money is growing, it's growing completely tax-free. And then number three, tax advantage number three, is upon distribution, if you are using those dollars for qualified medical expenses, which is what this is all about, then those distributions are 100% tax-free as well.
So just as an aside, right? Sometimes people are like, okay, so I'm going to put the money in there. It's going to grow for a year and then I'm going to use it. I think that's where the mistake happens, because a lot of our clients, what they're doing is they're utilizing this just as a longer term savings account that they can use for health benefits far out into the future. So it's like, let's grow this thing like a Roth IRA for healthcare, and you can use it into the future. But you're going to talk about some other things as well.
Well, and it can be used for near term or long term. Me personally, a family of 4, 2 young kids, I swear every time we show up to the doctor is $250 right there. So we are very active in our participation and utilization of those dollars. So I think the advantage is the list of expenses that you can utilize these accounts for is ever growing. So we're talking about doctor's visits, we're talking about prescriptions, we're talking about medical, dental, vision, and to your point, Chris, maybe even further out, much further out, these dollars could even be used for long-term care expenses. Yeah. So again, very, very beneficial, both near-term and long-term. And again, as it relates to what you're investing in, it depends on how accessible you need that money. You know, if it is near-term, you might not consider investing the entire amount and leaving some of those dollars on the side in like a money market, getting 4% interest, whatever you can get on those dollars. So,
do you remember when money markets paid nothing?
I do. Yeah, I mean, it wasn't that long ago.
It's right? So weird. Like when you said 4%, I almost wanted to hit the mute button real quick and be like, Andrew, no. But, well, the world has changed.
And to clarify, I should say 4.25. So we just did get the news that the Fed did cut rates about 10 minutes ago by 0.25%. So that's just something that we would expect to see moving forward as well. Right. So again, growing list of ability and ways to utilize those dollars. A couple more benefits that I'll add, and then I'll wrap this up. Number one is year over year, any unused balance in the HSA can be rolled over. And that's very different than FSA, flexible spending accounts, where the money that you contribute in that year, you got to take that out by December 31st or else you forfeit those dollars. So that's the biggest difference between those two types of accounts. HSAs can roll over any unused balance year over year over year. And then the last thing is portability. So whether or when you retire or if you were to change employers, you can take the account with you. You can do with it what you want, when you want. So it's you're in full control of that. So tremendous asset, tremendous tool when it comes to retirement saving and specifically healthcare savings as well.
Man, I got it. And I know Andrew's been a big proponent of HSAs for a long time. Mm-hmm. And I'll be honest with you, it's one of those things that I didn't focus on because the reality is oftentimes to start an HSA, it's a relatively small balance. And it has to build over time. But the more I've seen it used personally, and we've seen it used by folks on the staff, and we have clients that are coming in that have been using that, I mean, it is a phenomenal tool. It takes a little bit of time to understand, and you scratch the surface. I mean, there's still more to go. There's a lot behind that. But if you've got questions around that, I will say that Andrew, in fact, my wife had questions about it, and I said, you know what? I can answer these questions, but I'd prefer that you talk to Andrew because he has an insight on this that is above and beyond. So if you've got that, reach out to Andrew. Let him know.
Yep.
All right. Now is time for one of my favorite segments, which is Hey Hobart. And this is where every month we get a question from our viewers, and we give it the time and the attention it deserves. And today's question comes from Patricia in Greenville. So let me get this queued up real quick. All right. And Patricia asks, Hey Hobart, I'm 57 and starting to seriously think about retirement. My husband and I have about $750,000 saved across various accounts, and we're wondering if it's better to consolidate those funds or keep them spread out. Also, how can we be sure we don't run out of money? Well, I got to tell you, Patricia, that's a great question. And, one thing I know resonates with so many people nearing retirement is exactly what you're concerned about. Will I have enough? And a lot of times we start thinking about that when we're in our mid to late 50s. So I want to break this down into two parts. First, when it comes to consolidating accounts, it really depends on the types of accounts that you have and how they're invested. Consolidating can simplify things, fewer statements, easier tracking, as well as a clearer picture of your overall financial health. But you don't want to lose out on the unique benefits that certain accounts might offer. For example, some employer-sponsored accounts, they might have unique perks or protections that could be worth keeping. And that's why we typically recommend a strategy of partial consolidation, sometimes full consolidation, but partial, which is merging accounts where it makes sense while keeping those that might have a distinct advantage. Now, let's talk about that bigger concern, which is not running out of money. Now, this is where a comprehensive retirement income strategy, it's key. This is what we talk to folks all the time that, are stepping into retirement, but are also in that consideration phase. Hey, how do we make sure that the income plays out in the way that you have that comfortable retirement and you don't run out of money? And the thing here is it's not just about how much you saved. It's about how that money will last, how it's going to be taxed, and how it's going to work for you over time. And this is where my team and I focus on, one, creating an income plan, which is drawing income from a mix of sources, your Social Security, retirement accounts, investments, a pension if you're lucky enough, and all of that to ensure that you've got predictable cash flow. Next is protect against risk, which is managing inflation and healthcare costs and market downturns and taxation. As Jacob talked about, diversification, which is making sure that your money isn't tied to one asset class or a market sector. For example, one of the portfolios Jacob mentioned earlier, Income Growth Plus, could be a great fit for retirees who want competitive income generation, but they also want growth potential. Man, if you're 57 years old, you still need to be growing that money. You can't put it in the mattress and wait. Patricia, I encourage you, your husband, schedule a retirement readiness consultation with us. Anybody that would like to, we're here for that. And together we can help create and customize a plan that gives you confidence as you move into this next chapter of your life. Now, for anybody else watching, do me a favor, keep on sending those great questions. You can send them to us at heyhobart@hobartwealth.com, and yours might just be one that we use next time. All right, now this is when we're going to move on to quickfire Q&A. Andrew, I believe this is your first time actually answering the questions. I think the first time we did this, you asked me the questions, if I'm not mistaken.
Sounds about right.
I think so. So, Andrew, I've got a series of rapid fire questions. You can only take a sentence to answer them. So I don't want this blah, 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 blah. I want this. Right? Are you ready?
I thought I was. One sentence. We got it.
Because if you keep talking too long, then I'm just going to start yelling at you.
But it's all good stuff.
All right. You ready?
Sure.
All right. All right. So here we go. First question. What's one tax-saving move people should make before the end of the year?
It's a great time to start looking at what you've put in your retirement accounts, 401ks, IRAs, making sure that you've maxed them out if you have the ability to. I think so many people get to this point in the year, they kind of don't know where they are. So if there's any meat left on the bone, go ahead and max out those contributions to your retirement accounts. Great time to do that.
All right. That was two sentences.
Was that two sentences?
Okay. It might have been three, but we'll call it a run-on.
That's my Eastern North Carolina run-on sentence.
All right, next. Should people be reviewing their investment portfolios right now?
Absolutely. What better time than now, right? It's been a great year in the market. So good. I'm sure a lot of people can relate to this. You've probably had some growth, and a lot of that growth can be taxable. So it's a great time to look within the portfolio to see if there's any potential to do what's called loss harvesting, selling off some positions that might still be in a loss position to offset the taxability of some of the taxable gains that you've experienced this year.
That's great. And we have a tool that can really help with tax loss harvesting. I will tell you, when Jacob showed me how that tool worked, and was able to illustrate that and the long-term impact. Holy smokes.
Yeah.
I will tell you, if you are not tax loss harvesting when it comes to your investments, you are missing out. All right, question number 3. What is one overlooked deadline people need to know about?
Got to go with required distributions. So if you're 73 or older, you've got a target on your back. And this is the point where the government's requiring you, whether you want it or not, you got to take money out of your retirement accounts, 401ks, traditional IRAs. And if you do not take that out, or for any amount that you do not take out, there's a 25% penalty on that amount. So again, what better time than now to make sure you've hit your mark as far as the minimum that the government wants to see you take out of your retirement accounts.
Yeah, and penalty used to be 50%.
Used to be 50,
so
yeah.
like 25% sounds it's half off. I mean, but still
nasty.
Yeah, still take the RMD. Just trust us. All right, Andrew. Next, any advice for charitable giving at the end of the year?
Yeah, this is another overlooked topic, but if you're 70 and a half or older, you have the ability to take advantage of what are called qualified charitable gifts. This allows you to take money out of your traditional IRA, traditional 401k style accounts, and as long as you're giving that to church or charity 501c3s, then that is not a non-taxable event. And if you are also of RMD age, that also helps satisfy a portion to as much as the entire amount of RMD.
And is there a cap on that?
I want to say it's 100,000.
I believe you are correct.
100,000 on the QCD. Yep.
Sorry, I could have blown you up there, but you got it right.
Yeah.
All right. One last question. Is there still time to make changes to healthcare or other benefits at this stage of the game?
There are, and I'm going to go back to the HSA. So we are coming up on the end of the year, but for HSA contributions, you actually have until April 15th of next year to make a contribution to your HSA and technically traditional IRA and Roth IRA as well, so that it takes effect as a 2024 contribution. So April 15th is the deadline there.
All right. Well, that's a wrap for Quickfire Q&A. You did a great job.
Thanks.
There is a reason why we hear from so many clients that they enjoy working with Andrew. Obviously, got your CFP. You've been doing this a long time. Your insight, since I've known you, has just grown and grown and grown. So thanks, Andrew, for your insights. Yeah. And thanks to everyone that submitted these quickfire questions as well. As always, please keep them coming. We love to answer these. Obviously, this time we had a couple more because we got just a ton of questions. So we'll be keeping our eyes open for future sessions with that. All right. This wraps up our month's Wealthologist. This wraps up 2024, the year Wealthologist Live. I want to thank Jacob and Andrew for their insights today, and the other members of the Hobart team for their insights throughout the year and sharing with this, and the behind-the-scenes people as well. Kim Collins, as many of you know, does a lot of hard work for us here as my assistant. And I just want to thank all of you for joining us today. Next month, we're going to be talking a bit more about the Fed's latest move, what we think that it means for interest rates going forward, and what it means for your portfolio. Plus, we're going to welcome a special guest to talk about alternative investments in today's market. Until then, send your questions to heyhobart@hobartwealth.com. And remember, your financial success, it is our top priority. Take care, and we'll see you next time.